Okay, it's October 3rd, 2015. This is Richard Cornish. All right. Hi, Richard. Okay, to start off, question number one. When were you born and where?
Born on East Court Street in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Christmas Day, 1926. I was born in my Aunt Eva's house where my mother and father were staying. Well, my father worked up in Morristown, New Jersey, and he would come to my Aunt Eva's and spend the weekends with my mother until I was born. And I stayed in my Aunt Eva's house for a few months, and then my mother and father boarded me out in Morris Plains, New Jersey, while they both worked at Greystone Park, which was a mental hospital in Morristown, New Jersey.
Okay, well, how come you didn't stay with Nan's mother?
Well, my mother, as a young girl, met my dad, and inevitably, the usual happened. She became pregnant, and her family was quite upset and basically chased her out or put her out. And one of her older sisters, Eva, who had a home on Court Street in East Allentown, took her in, which was very gracious of her. And my mother stayed there during the time that she was pregnant until she gave birth to me, as I said, on Christmas morning of December 25th, 1926.
So you ruined their Christmas. Anyway, how did your dad meet your mom exactly, and where?
Well, my mother's younger brother, his name was Nicholas, they called him Nicky. He was quite a young, rambunctious guy, and him and one of his buddies by the name of Frank Ebner, who later become married into the family later on, they took a truck for a joyride, and they got caught, and they ended up in what's called juvenile court. And the judge didn't think it was that funny. He sent Frank Ebner to reform school and sent my Uncle Nick to the mental hospital to have his head examined. So my father, who was a head guard at what's called Rittersville, a mental hospital in Allentown, Pennsylvania, came into work one morning, and who's in his so-called care in his ward, locked up, is this young guy named Nicholas Hodich. Okay. And that afternoon, this very good-looking, dark-haired girl comes up and is to be my mother. Her name was Anastasia Hodich. But basically, in their language, she was called Nellie. Well, of course, my father hounded in on her. She was very attractive, and he was a young single guy. And he ended up telling her how to get her brother out, and ended up becoming her boyfriend. And with the end result, as I said, she ended up getting pregnant. And that led to her being kicked out of the house and taken in by one of her older sisters, Eva.
How old was Nan? How old was Nellie?
I believe she's around about 19 years old. My father was the same age. He had come up from the state of Maryland to work at the Allentown Hospital at Rittersville. That's how it all came about.
So how long did you stay at Eva's? How long did you stay at Eva's place?
We stayed there a few months, and my mother arranged for me to board at right outside of the hospital at Morristown, a little village called Morris Plains. And I stayed there for almost the next I think I was about near 3 years old when the lady had to ask my mother or tell my mother she couldn't tend to me anymore because my mom would come down at noontime and at night, but I got to the stage where when my mother would leave, I would raise holy hell and cry half the night. So the lady asked my mother to make other plans. Well, my mother and father decided, and they headed to Delaware. He was going to ask, yes, his family had moved across the line from Burrsville, Maryland, into the background of Harrington, Delaware. And they went down to my father's people, and my father, for some reason, was kind of shy of asking his mother if she would tend to me, because she already had a cousin of mine named Billy Cornish, who was the son of my dad's older brother, William. And the one they were raising was called Billy. So anyhow, my father asked his sister Mary, a younger sister, if she would ask and try to get them to take me in. Well, what happened was, weirdly, a weird thing in life, Mary forgot to ask. And my mother and father ended up the next day driving up to Allentown to where my mother was going to ask her mother to take me in for $30 a month. Well, my grandmother, at that time, they were poor. It was poor times. She graciously said yes, she would accept me to live there. And it ended up that I lived there until I was 14, going on 15 years old. I went to the Allentown schools. My life was it was on Jordan Street, 722 Jordan Street. And I stayed there at my grandmom's, and my grandpops, and my Aunt Helen. And Uncle Nick, whenever he was around, he would come and go. And I stayed there till I was going on 15. And my mother and father were working up in the Greystone Park in Morristown, New Jersey. Okay. So a new hospital opened up in Orangeburg, New York, called Rockland State. And my mother and father found out that they paid a few more dollars, even though it was further. They used to come every weekend to spend with me at Aunt Eva's in Allentown. No, I'm wrong. They would come and spend, I was already at my grandmother's on Jordan Street. And anyhow, they quit their job at Morristown and they moved up to what's called Rockland State, which is in Rockland County. It paid a few more dollars. But you had to live. They gave you an apartment and you lived and ate on the hospital's grounds. Well, it stayed that way till I was near 14, and then the state of New York would pay you a little bit more if you went and got your own place and did your own eating. So my mother and father rented a little apartment on Ridge Street in a little village town called Pearl River, New York. And they come and got me and moved me to Pearl River, which I didn't like. I didn't like at all. because I loved Allentown, I loved my grandmom, and I didn't want to go to this new town,
Okay,
but I did.
Stop right there for a minute. Let me just change this.
Now, how far am I going to go up with this till you want to make it a one thing?